Tired of your car insurance rate going up even with a clean driving record? You're not alone. That's why there's Jerry, your proactive insurance assistant. Jerry compares rates side by side from over 50 top insurers and helps you switch with ease. Jerry even tracks market rates and alerts you when it's best to shop. No spam calls, no hidden fees. Drivers who save with Jerry could save over $1,300 a year. Switch with confidence. Download the Jerry app or visit jerry.ai/ACAST today.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now. You call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
Hello and welcome to episode number 302 of Real Life Ghost Stories. And to kick things off this week, I would like to say thanks to some of our newest Patreon subscribers. I would like to thank Sam and Serafina, Sarah Fleming, Christine Allen, Caitlin Holt, Abstract Tiger, Joe V, Holly Gloss, Greg S, Sarah D Dawson, and Ash Greenwood. Thank you so much for subscribing to the Patreon. I love you and appreciate you every single day. And our film review this week, our film review is Shelby Oaks. Shelby Oaks was released in 2025. It is 5.4 out of 10 on IMDb and 55% on Rotten Tomatoes. A woman's obsessive search for her missing sister leads her into a terrifying mystery at the hands of an unknown evil. Now, I was really excited to watch this film, right, because of its origin story. So, if you don't know, Shelby Oaks is essentially a crowd-funded horror film. And it was the brainchild of a YouTuber named Chris Stuckman. And he kind of did film reviews on YouTube and whatever, and was apparently really popular. And it's really interesting, the story. He had this idea that he really wanted to make a good horror film, but obviously in order to do that you need money, etc. He did a Kickstarter, ended up making a load of money. The story itself is like well worth a read, and I'm not going to get into all of it now, but basically the film was shown at a film festival, and Mike Flanagan, who did I think like Haunting of Hill House and Bly Manor and all those kind of series, he eventually got involved, and we ended up here with the film on general release. And the story is about this paranormal YouTube channel, like right at the very kind of beginning of YouTube, and the team, they get murdered, right? And one of them, Riley, goes missing, and her sister is still searching for her years later. So there's lots of like weird things about their YouTube channel, about the footage that they shot. There's missing footage, all that kind of jazz. And Stuckman apparently created like Instagram accounts and footage from the old YouTube channel, etc., for marketing. And I personally absolutely love the dedication to an old school viral marketing campaign. So as far as I'm aware, people were like seeing these paranormal paranoids, that's the name of the YouTube channel in the film. They were seeing these videos online and discussing them as though they were real, etc. And it's very reminiscent of like the Blair Witch Project, when people really thought the Blair Witch Project was real. They had set up like missing persons websites for the characters in the film, etc. And people got really involved in it. And I love that kind of marketing. I think it's really fun, really clever, and it really includes the consumer, right, in a really kind of palpable way. So for all of those reasons, I was really excited to watch this film from when I first saw the trailer in the cinema, you know, a couple of months ago. And fundamentally, right, I will watch a passion project like this over churned out, poorly executed, cash-grabbing, schlocky Hollywood horror any day. And in terms of the likes for this film, I really do think that there is a lot to like about it. There's definitely moments of shock, and there are moments of like slow, kind of drawn out, anxiety inducing creepiness that I was like, yeah, that's pretty good. I also really enjoyed the setup for the story. So that kind of old YouTube community idea, these videos that are online that people are poring over trying to figure out who was involved, why did these people go missing, why were they murdered, and where is this one girl who wasn't murdered allegedly, who was never found, where is she now? Like that kind of mystery horror element I really enjoyed. So I thought the first section of this film was its real strength, and that was where I was really hooked by the story. Like, I genuinely wanted to know what happened to Riley. I was intrigued. I was like, she can't possibly still be alive, you know? So if she's dead, what's happened to her? And again, like, I feel like the kind of found footage elements and like mockumentary elements of this story were the best part and definitely the scariest. There is something so terrifying in found footage where you just see like this grainy, shadowy still of whatever entity is present, and it's so effective. But in terms of likes for this film, that was kind of it. So I really did not enjoy the mix of genres. So I've kind of alluded to the fact that there's like found footage, there's like mockumentary style, and the film opens in a mockumentary style where they are interviewing like the people who were involved in the original disappearance, like the family members, the police, etc. And then they also have like found footage from the YouTube channel, etc. And I was like, okay, I'm on board. I'm enjoying this. But then the film goes from that kind of found footage to just like straight point and shoot horror, traditional filmmaking, right? And to me, it felt completely disjointed and strange. I did see other reviewers say that they really enjoyed the switch up in genre and that they really felt like it was done really well. I didn't like that mix of styles. I thought, pick one, stick to it, right? If you're going to do mockumentary found footage, we know that can work really well. You know, case in point, films like Lake Mungo, for example, like we know that kind of mockumentary found footage style can be really, really effective and really interesting to watch as a horror film. And I felt like it didn't make much sense to move between styles in that way. And I think that would have made for much better storytelling. But fundamentally, I think this film's fatal flaw was that everything needed to be pared back. There were so many threads to the story that it became unnecessarily convoluted and needed a lot of explanation and exposition. And I think that too much exposition kills a good, scary story. Like, to give you a brief example off the top of my head about what I mean by there's too many threads in this story. We had the found footage, the YouTube channel. We had Riley, the girl who goes missing, who seems to have some sort of psychic powers. And then her sister. And then a guy shows up with found footage. And then we have a like scary murderer who was involved. We have some sort of alleged demon, windows cracking, hellhounds, a trip to a prison. We've got, you know, people doing things they shouldn't do decisions wise. There was just way too many threads. That meant that there was just too much explaining going on. And therefore I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm sort of bored now, actually. This is taken away from the scariness. And what was really frustrating is that all of the scary elements of the story worked. Like, all of those threads were interesting in and of themselves, but all of them together just made the story way too convoluted. I also thought that there was so little character development that happened in this story in place of this exposition that I just didn't really care. Like, I didn't really care about Riley and her sister who was now looking for her. I didn't care about, you know, the sister and her husband who seemed to have the worst relationship known to man. Stupid decisions were made left, right and centre where people are going to places in the middle of the night where they just shouldn't. Kind of really obvious factors of the investigation seem to have been completely missed and or ignored. like going down into basements where, you know, you really shouldn't be going. And I know that in horror films, in order to drive the plot, people often make stupid decisions, right? Or what we perceive as stupid decisions where you're like, I would never do that in that situation. This was the extreme of that, where I repeatedly watched this character make the most absurd decisions. And I just went, you know, I don't care if you die, actually, because I feel like you have a death wish making these decisions. So look, the film isn't like life-changing. It is worth a watch, I would argue. And the reason I think it's worth a watch is because I really appreciate that Chris Stuckman clearly had an idea that he wanted to build and he wanted to make this horror film and he got it made. And it seems to me that he probably learned the hard way that actually directing a film is really hard and really difficult. And that's probably something that we would all learn in that situation, you know, because we all think, oh, I could do much better, or I wouldn't do that, or I definitely wouldn't do this. And actually then you come to create a feature-length film and you're like, oh, this is actually much more difficult than I had thought. But I appreciate that this is homegrown. This is something that was a grassroots project that, you know, fought its way to get made, and it did get made, and I respect that. The story, I think, could have been really, really interesting. And you know, in general, the story is interesting and engaging. It's kind of got like a Rosemary's Baby type vibe, which I was on board with. It needed work, you know. But like I said when I watched Good Boy, like, this film isn't going to change your life. But I think it's really important to engage with these kind of films when they come out, because it means that A, more people will make them if the audience is there for them, and B, we won't end up with just this absolute deluge of schlocky, jump scare, loud noise, riddled Hollywood horror films that are just poor. So for that reason, I'm going to give Shelby Oaks 3 stars.
In a world where January is supposed to be boring, one staple of the holidays refuses to end. The great deals at Verizon. The joy just keeps on coming. Right now, you can save on 4 new phones and 4 lines. Critics agree it's the deal that keeps on giving. Come into Verizon and save on 4 new phones and 4 lines on unlimited welcome. Additional terms apply. See Verizon.com for details.
Tired of your car insurance rate going up even with a clean driving record? You're not alone. That's why there's Jerry, your proactive insurance assistant. Jerry compares rates side by side from over 50 top insurers and helps you switch with ease. Jerry even tracks market rates and alerts you when it's best to shop. No spam calls, no hidden fees. Drivers who save with Jerry could save over $1,300 a year. Switch with confidence. Download the Jerry app or visit jerry.ai/ACAST today.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now. You call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
Which brings us to our story this week. Now, our story this week takes place in the happiest place on earth. Today we are talking about haunted Disneyland. So let's just jump right into it. It is the most wonderful, magical, happiest place on earth. Nothing can quite compare, though many others have certainly tried and failed. Today we are in Disneyland, the theme park where the real world melts away and adoring fans can come face to face with some of their most cherished storybook characters. But where there is light, there is darkness. And when the light is as bright as the one created by Disney, the shadow it casts could be like nothing we have ever seen before. There is a price for Disney's magic, and it is a price that many pay without even realising it. Employees have to sign intense contracts that forego their rights to life-saving treatments like CPR until they have been moved back into the seclusion of the staff corridors. All in the name of keeping the magic alive, of course. After all, treasured guests have spent their hard-earned money to visit the park and see the attractions. They didn't pay a small fortune to watch Mickey Mouse's head come off to save the person inside the costume now, did they? But that question somewhat implies that it is only the staff that are in danger of losing their lives while at Disneyland, and that the millions of people who visit the parks every year are safe themselves. As the saying goes, nothing is ever as it seems. Beneath the magical and family-friendly veneer lies heavy-duty machinery and the grinding cogs that keep the park going. The unsuspecting visitor could find tragedy lurking behind almost every corner, especially if they've wandered off the beaten path and ventured into the sprawling underground staff tunnels or made their way to the man behind the curtain. Since they first opened their gates, there have been a number of deaths at Disneyland parks all over the world, some of which we will get into in today's episode, but in the sense of getting to the reason why we are all here, let's just say not everyone who entered the park lived to tell the tale. And if the rumours are to be believed, not all of those who died inside the park walls left for the other side afterwards. Disneyland is haunted, at least that's what the stories say. Staff and park goers alike often return home talking about the same experiences, though that shared encounter would be years, sometimes generations apart. The first of today's stories is one just like that, and it comes to us from the very top of the Disneyland Tower. It is the summer of 1955, and we are in Anaheim, California. It is an historic day, with thousands of people in attendance all gathered around a set of golden gates. A man steps forward, cuts a ribbon and flings the gates open, welcoming the crowd before him into the very first Disneyland in the world. By all accounts, since then Disneyland Anaheim has hosted over 600 million people, though more than a few of those people have been repeat visitors. Chief amongst them was the man by the gates himself, Walt Disney. In life, he had poured his heart and soul into his magical empire, and with the opening of his new park, he had created a place where magic was really real. And who could blame him for being unable to part with it when his time finally came? Walt Disney was a busy man. He had studios to run, films to make, and childhoods to influence. With multiple parks and properties under his belt, he was constantly being pulled in every direction at any given time. The only solution was to stay on the move, so Walt had a home and a base of operation wherever he went. For his first Disneyland in Anaheim, that home was an apartment inside the park itself. Just past the entrance and right beside the City Hall restrooms is a building known as the Firehouse. Visitors standing on the street and looking up to one of the windows on the second floor will then find a lamp in the window. When Walt was alive, that lamp was a messenger. Much like the function of a royal flag, if the lamp was on, then Walt Disney was in residence. Staff knew to be extra diligent in their duties, and guests wandered the park with extra enthusiasm in case they bumped into the man himself. It was shortly after Walt died that people realised that that light would never shine again. But life went on, and the park doors stayed open for business. But one fateful evening, a member of staff tasked with cleaning Walt's apartment found the light on. It was a sad reminder of what they had all lost, but there was no bringing back the dead. She switched it off, finished up her work and headed outside, only to look up at the window and see that the lamp in the window was still on. Perhaps tutting to herself and blaming her own forgetfulness, the woman went back inside and turned the lamp off. But once outside, she saw the lamp was on again. This time the woman knew that she hadn't forgotten to turn the lamp off, but she also didn't want to get in trouble with her supervisors for leaving it on, so she went back inside for a third time. She approached the lamp, turned the knob, and off the light went. This time, instead of leaving right away, the woman waited and watched as the light switched itself back on. After that, no thoughts about supervisors were enough to keep the woman in the apartment, and she raced out into the night. Since then, her story has become legend, and the light in the fire station window has stayed on day and night. The official park statement says that it is in honour of Walt's memory and is a symbol of his remaining influence in the park, though others say that the park didn't exactly have much say in the matter, and Walt himself wanted everyone to know that he was home for good. Just like this first story, staff at Disneyland are very much on the front line of what goes on inside the parks. By day, they do their jobs and keep the guests happy, but as the day draws to an end and the park begins to empty, staff responsibilities tend to change. Now, instead of magic makers, staff become witnesses or paranormal investigators in their own rights. Writing online under the name Mike A., one former staff member shared his experiences while working in Anaheim. "I worked custodial from 2002 to 2004, Mike wrote, and had some bizarre things happen to me. I used to hear tons of stories from co-workers about certain areas being haunted, so I would always wander around the park exploring. Disney is creepy when it's empty, so I can see why people would have stories of being watched or having strange feelings. One night in New Orleans, I was emptying the trash from the exit of the haunted mansion. I came back down the employee stairs and saw an elderly woman in an antique-looking wheelchair sitting in the hallway. I thought nothing of it and opened the door to where the trash can was. As I held the door open with my foot, tying the trash bag, I thought to myself, what was that guest doing in an employee-only hallway? The park has been closed for a while. When I turned back into the hallway, not even 5 seconds later, the lady was gone. A few months later, I was talking with a woman who had worked there for a long time. We were talking about deaths in the park and the possibilities of the supernatural. She told me a story about sweeping inside the haunted mansion at the bottom of the elevators after the park had closed, and seeing an elderly woman in a wheelchair. When she looked up to speak to her, the room was empty. I didn't tell her what happened to me, but I had a lump in my throat and felt pretty creeped out for a long time. And for Mike, the woman in the wheelchair would be just one of many sightings. I remember sweeping the line for Roger Rabbit one night, he continued, and out of the corner of my eye I saw a man standing near me in a navy blue t-shirt and black Dickies styled shorts. I asked if he needed anything, and when I looked up he was gone. I walked pretty fast all the way through the line looking for him, and nobody was in there. Nobody was in there because Toontown was closed. As you can probably tell from the earlier and very casual mention of deaths at the park from Mike's story, people do die in Disneyland, though you may not always hear about it in the news. There are systems in place to try and obscure Disney's shadow, like transporting remains away in an ambulance to declare them dead elsewhere. But sometimes there's no hiding the truth, like what happened in the summer of 1966. As a tradition, every June, Disneyland will stay open overnight for high school graduates. Known as Grad Night, this experience is a core memory for hundreds of thousands of students who are saying goodbye to many of their classmates before taking the next step in their lives. At least, that's what it's supposed to be. For some, it would be a night that there was no coming back from. 19-year-old Thomas Cleveland had jumped the fence and was now on the monorail track when he was caught by security guards. The guards from the ground warned Thomas to get down, but Thomas, afraid of getting into trouble, started running along the tracks instead. It was shortly after that Thomas was struck by one of the monorail trains and dragged about 40 feet. He unfortunately did not survive the collision. Writing about her experiences of working in Disneyland on wanderwisdom.com, Kirsten had this to say about Thomas and his accident. I heard rumours that sometimes late at night, cast members driving the monorail would see a young man running along the monorail tracks at the back of the park, in the spot where Thomas died. 1 minute the figure was there, and then the next he was gone. Continuing with what she knew of the park, Kirsten moved on to America Sings. This is the big, round, rotating building at the east end of Tomorrowland. Originally, it was the Carousel of Progress, showcasing predictions of products for the near and not so near future. It closed in the early 1970s and reopened in the summer of 1974 as America Sings, a show highlighting the musical history of the first 200 years of the United States. 2 weeks after the new attraction opened, a new ride operator, 18-year-old Deborah Stone, was killed when she was crushed between the wall of the moving audience section and the stationary stage. Ever since, cast members working the ride have reported hearing a voice tell them to be careful. The America Sings building is also said to be haunted by the ghost of a teenage boy who died in the speed tunnel section of the People Mover, which is on the outer edge of the building. The boy died while trying to jump from one car to another and was dragged along the track before the ride came to a stop. And to pick one final entry from Kirsten's list of haunted locations in Disneyland, I want to mention the boy often seen on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. Supposedly, Kirsten wrote, there is a boy ghost who is seen in the video monitors. He can be seen in the control tower, caught on surveillance cameras. He always seems to be happy and enjoying himself. But when the boat comes back into the station, it's always empty. As far as I can tell, there have been no deaths on the ride itself, but there are some gruesome accounts from when the ride first opened in 1967. According to legend, park engineers, or Imagineers as they're called, were unhappy with the skeleton animatronics and reached out to the University of California for a macabre solution to their particular problem. The university then provided Disney with real human remains to help add some authenticity to the attraction, which were only replaced many, many years later. The official park stance is that every human remain included in the attraction has since been replaced with a synthetic one. But rumours continue to circulate that the skull used in what is known as the bedroom scene is very much real. And to round off things today, I feel like no anthology of netizen stories is ever complete without dipping our toes into the deep pool of Reddit. When asked to share their experiences online, many former Disneyland employees had a lot to say. But I've selected an account from a user called Cheek on Your Face. About a year ago, they answered, I want to preface this by saying that I don't believe in ghosts. When I first started working for Disneyland, I worked in Critter Country stores. About 2 weeks after starting, I had a shift that ended 15 minutes after everyone else, so I had to walk the park alone. So now it's 1:45 in the morning, and I'm walking on stage in front of Splash Mountain looking at my cell phone. As I'm right in front of the Splash Mountain entrance, I look up at the hill and see a little girl in what looks like a First Communion dress. It wasn't shiny or anything like that, so I thought that it was just a little girl that was lost, maybe 7 or 8 years old. I look around to see if there's any other cast members that can help me because I'm panicking trying to remember the protocol for lost kids since I was still so new. I'm walking towards her as she's closer to the entrance to the Davy Crockett canoes. And I asked her if she needs help or if she was lost, and she still had her back to me. As I get closer, I look around again thinking how upset I was at security for not clearing the area of the park and leaving me with this mess. We're maybe 20 yards away from each other as I look to the left and look to the right for any help, and as I look forward again I see that the little girl has ran towards me, but I didn't hear her footsteps. And I can tell that she was going to run into me and we both might fall. I wince and brace for impact, but it doesn't happen. When I open my eyes, the little girl is gone. And I look around for a little bit, but decide that this isn't my problem anymore. I didn't think anything of it until about a week later, when I had an opening shift with one of my leads who had been in the resort for 20 years. I hadn't told anyone about this because I thought I might get in trouble for leaving a guest lost in the park, especially a kid. I begin probing by asking her, "Have you seen anything weird at night?" And she responds, "Did you see a girl in a white dress?" My blood turned to ice and my stomach dropped. She had described everything that happened without knowing it happened to me. It turns out that Splash Mountain cast members and Haunted Mansion cast members all have similar stories, and some of the older cast would share their knowledge. Apparently, there was a little girl that everyone calls Mary. She loved Tom Sawyer's Island and Haunted Mansion and that part of the park in the early 70s. She had leukemia, and when she passed away, her parents spread her ashes on Tom Sawyer's Island. Evidently, the parents told a Haunted Mansion cast member many years after that they had done this, but by that time, many cast members in the area claimed to have seen a little girl in a white dress walking on the island or around the area that became the entrance to Critter Country. It would certainly seem like Disneyland is a place that is imbued with magic. It's just interesting to imagine that this place of childhood magic and wonder is also a place that seems to be incredibly haunted. Now, there are lots of people out there who'll be listening to this who have listened to countless stories about Disney hauntings on various podcasts and YouTube channels, etc. And you will know that there are approximately 1 billion haunted Disney stories. So this is only one part. Maybe there will be subsequent parts if I can find interesting haunted Disney stories. If you've got a particular haunted Disney story that you want me to look into, please feel free to email it in. And I'm not a Disney person, you know. I know there's lots of people listening who will be like huge Disney fans, not necessarily Disney haunted story fans, but Disney fans in general. But I will say that The Emperor's New Groove is the best Disney film ever made, and I think it's important to put that out there. And if you believe anything else, then I'm sorry to say that you are either wrong or you have no taste. I will accept that Tarzan is also a cracking Disney film, and that Trashing the Camp, the song, I would argue, is one of the best Disney songs. I have only ever been to Disneyland Paris, so I don't have very much frame of reference for Disneyland. I know there's people that like go to Disneyland all the time and visit all the time and absolutely adore it. And there's all those people who do things like Disney bounding. Because I think in Disneyland, you're not allowed to go in fancy dress. As in, you can't dress up specifically as the characters, which makes sense, right? I imagine that if you allowed people to dress up, then there would be no point in having the paid employees who are dressed as specific Disney characters. Because I've seen some of the costumes do when people are doing cosplay, and those are pretty incredible. And I think Disney bounding is when you like dress kind of referentially, you know, you're like, okay, I can't dress as Yzma from The Emperor's New Groove, but I can wear an outfit that, you know, points to her character, like specific colours, etc. So that's a pretty cool thing to do, I suppose. I also think that the Disney employment in terms of the cast members at Disneyland is really crazy. Like, on the one hand, I can understand it. The whole point is to maintain the illusion at all times, that you cannot slip out of character at any point and be seen by the guests. And I get it, right? I get the importance of maintaining the illusion, etc., etc. I mean, it wouldn't be for me. I wouldn't be signing a contract that says, you know, you can't receive medical treatment until you are in basically the staff corridors or staff areas. That wouldn't be for me, but each to their own. I know there's so many people who, like, it's their dream to work at Disney, and they work really hard to get jobs in the parks and work as particular characters, and I totally get it. Each to their own. And I guess it's really important to also say, which is something that I kind of try and point out every time we're talking about real deaths of real people, right? There's no part of me that wants to like sensationalize or trivialize the deaths of real people. That is not what I do this podcast for. And I don't think the deaths of real people should be paranormal fodder. With that being said, obviously, the deaths that are associated with the hauntings are part of the canon of the Disneyland hauntings, I suppose. And so going back to the beginning of this episode in terms of Walt Disney himself, who allegedly, isn't there like a whole conspiracy theory about Walt Disney being cryogenically frozen? I haven't looked into it. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that is a conspiracy theory somewhere. But Walt Disney himself, like, created an empire and clearly kind of went around to all of his different attractions and parks, etc., and studios and yada yada yada. And it kind of makes sense that even in death he wouldn't want to leave that. So I think it's this idea of the lamp being left on, and the lamp, representing that he was in situ when he was alive, and it then being left on in his death is kind of a really, I do think it is a beautiful thought. And I also think it's kind of like an inoffensive haunting. It's quite a lovely thing to think that he was maybe coming back to say, no, I am still here. I am still here. I'm still overlooking this thing that I created. I am going to be here even in death. I mean, it's also vaguely threatening, I would argue. But still, we're just going to see the nice side of it. And I think that when you have something like the light being left on as a symbol of his, remaining influence in the park, that's the official statement. It's something like that is a tangible connection to the dead, that is a tangible connection to his life, that, represented his presence when he was alive and, could be seen as representing his presence in death, that is always going to come with paranormal stories that will grow up around it. And I think that's pretty understandable. And when you read people's experiences of having worked at Disneyland, what you read is that how eerie the park is at nighttime. And it totally makes sense. We've spoken about it so many times on the podcast, where places that are joyful, bustling with life, and full of noise and laughter during the day, like schools, for example, take on a very eerie overtone at night when they are empty, dark and silent. And not only that, in places like Disneyland, you are going to be walking around an empty, silent, eerie park that is full of giant images of almost, uncanny valley characters. And that in itself is pretty disturbing, right? And here's the thing. I would well believe that Disneyland could be haunted. And not necessarily because of the deaths. Obviously, there have been tragic deaths in Disneyland, as I pointed out. Things have happened, accidents have happened. It is inevitable. And I think that, unfortunately, when you have humans around machinery that can possibly kill you, bad things are going to happen. And there are, of course, the deaths where people have just died from natural causes in the parks. The parks are visited by millions of people every year. It is inevitable that some people are going to have medical episodes and die while they're in the parks. And yes, I think it is really sad that, for example, Thomas Cleveland, he was on the monorail track running along, and his ghost is still seen running along the monorail tracks. I would like to think that rather than a haunting, that is like stone tape theory, that is a residual energy. We are seeing an echo through time, because you'd like to think that, the spirit, the ghost, the soul, whatever, of Thomas Cleveland did manage to move on elsewhere. That is what you would like to think. However, I also think there is a kind of a sweet side to this. So in the case with the little girl in the white dress, and the case with the boy supposedly on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride who's seen on the video monitors, and then he's really happy to enjoying himself, and when it comes back the boat is empty, right? I think for a lot of people, going to Disneyland is completely joyous and brings them so much happiness, especially for children, right? So maybe their soul is going back to a place or a time or a moment where they felt truly happy, where they were like, this is the most magical place on earth and I'm having the best time. I mean, obviously for the people who are actually actively experiencing these hauntings, you're not in the moment, you're not going, oh my God, well, I hope that they're really happy. You're thinking, oh my God, shit, I've just seen the ghost of a little girl in a white dress and I'm freaking out. And maybe for the woman in the wheelchair that was seen multiple times, maybe for her, it was a place that she visited where she felt immense joy, maybe towards the end of her life. So I think there's a positive to it. I mean, if I was at the receiving end of this haunting, I'd kind of be like, good for you that you're reliving the nice bits of your life, but maybe could you do it when I'm not there? Anyway, that was fun. There are loads of haunted Disney stories, and there are loads of videos from CCTV footage in various parks of like ghostly sightings, etc., that are probably well worth, going down the rabbit hole. They're fun, they're pretty inoffensive and interesting to read about. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. And if you have a story that you would like to share, you can send it to reallifeghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com. You can also check out the website reallifeghoststoriespodcast.com. And if you are desperate for some extra content, you can subscribe to the Patreon. That is patreon.com/reallifeghoststories, where for $5 a month or for $2 a month, you can get access to heaps of extra content, as well as every single main and mini episode completely ad-free. And on that note, I shall see you next time.
In a world where January is supposed to be boring, one staple of the holidays refuses to end. The great deals at Verizon. The joy just keeps on coming. Right now, you can save on 4 new phones and 4 lines. Critics agree it's the deal that keeps on giving. Come into Verizon and save on 4 new phones and 4 lines on unlimited welcome. Additional terms apply. See Verizon.com for details.